Good evening, this is Maestro Cretella with a Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite modcast. Today we have a 2v2 on Desert Shodown. Our first player is PrincessPonyPants as this huge, tough, powerful, Tyrant Hive Tyrant, a tanky melee hero, can be upgraded to have a charge, an invulnerability ability. Very tough dude overall, very powerful. His teammate is Zoukka, as this Plague Champion who just got knocked down. Plague Champion starts off as a ranged hero, can be upgraded to become a melee hero. He also synergizes well with vehicles, and he can repair, and even heal as well. A lot of versatility. Our next player on the other team is Maestro Cretella, today actually playing as the Inquisitor. The Inquisitor is a disabling and debuffing hero. Very interesting. A lot of people hate her, even though she's not all that commonly played. Can't really get a look at her face behind that hat. And our last player on the red team is Kickin F as this Eldar Warlock, an Eldar hero who is very fast, fights in melee, can either be a tanky melee hero or an offensive spellcaster, and has a few variations in between. Alright, so for this cast, as you can see, I'm playing as a hero that I don't normally play and as a race I don't normally play. And I wanted to, instead of not as much of a play-by-play in this game, and talk a little bit more theoretical stuff. So here I'm playing as the Inquisitor. The Inquisitor, I think, she's actually somewhat of a fairly, at least what it seems to me, she seems to be a somewhat less commonly played hero, even though she's extremely good. And even though she's not commonly played, when she is played, she is commonly complained about. So right now I'm playing as the Imperial Guard. One of the things about Imperial Guard that I'm finding in comparison to Chaos is that when I play Chaos, especially with the Sorcerer, I have a lot of trouble dealing with tanky melee heroes. And right now I actually have a tanky melee hero pushing me back all the way into my base. But I was still able to kite him, focus fire him, and not take too many losses. Here I'm moving a bit into the middle. Alright, and not too much is happening with my teammate at the moment, so I can continue to talk about my stuff. But one of the things that's tough about Chaos, and especially for the Sorcerer, is that it's tough to... It can be tough to deal with tanky melee heroes. Tanky melee heroes, the main way to take care of tanky melee heroes is to kite and focus fire, and this is a strategy that is not as viable with Chaos, since they're not going to have as many sources of focus fire. Chaos, generally, you're usually going to have one Chaos Space Marine. It's not as practical to put 2 Chaos Space Marines on the field as it is to put 2 range squads for most other races, just because of the cost associated with Chaos Space Marines, as well as their range damage output compared to those other races. I mean, the other races are mostly putting out roughly damage that's probably on par with Chaos Space Marines, but for a much lower cost. So it's much more practical to put out multiple range squads for other races. And as you can see right here, I mean, I have my double guardsman. I do have my sentinel. And that basically gives me 3 ranged units that I can use to focus down the Hive Tyrant. And one of the ways to increase your range DPS is not just to upgrade your existing ranged units, such as getting these battle equipment on the Dire Avengers or getting Eternal War on your Chaos Space Marines, but to just get more ranged units. And the Imperial Guard opening and the Imperial Guard race as a general just includes more ranged units. That's just the way the race is. So some other things that have been going on. There's certainly a big engagement going on right here. PrincessPonyPants has an interesting tier 1. He's got both double Hormagaunts and double Termagants. So he's got both a lot of range damage and a lot of power to push forward in melee. And I think he has that for a relatively cheap cost. His Hive Tyrant is still unupgraded, so he hasn't invested much in his Hive Tyrant, and to be honest, he doesn't really need to. He did get the Toxin Sacks on his Termagants, and that is certainly a worthwhile upgrade. That is going to increase the damage of the Termagants pretty significantly. Their damage is something like in the 20s when they don't have the Toxin Sacks, and then it's roughly in the 40s when they do have it. So another thing that I've been doing here is that you've been seeing a lot of fire going around. That is because I did upgrade to the Holy Brazier on the Inquisitor. Now with the Inquisitor, you have 2 choices for your tier 1 weapons. You have the Holy Brazier, and there's also the Crossbow Bolt Pistol, and both are very good. And certainly in this particular matchup, I could have gone with either one of them, and either one of them would have been good. The crossbow bolt pistol is a melee. It's a snare, a unit snare. So it's particularly good as a melee counter. Would be good against these double Hormagaunts that Princess Pony has, as well as this Hive Tyrant. But as you can see, I instead went for that Holy Brazier. You know, I did that because the Holy Brazier, it has that area of effect damage fire ability, and I decided that that was actually going to be more valuable in this game. Basically, with Princess Ponypants having 4 squads that have very low health per model, I decided that that area of effect damage would be more effective than the snare from the crossbow bolt pistol. And that crossbow bolt pistol would have allowed me to keep the Hormagaunts at bay and then focus fire them with the Guardsman and the Sentinel. But what the Brazier does is that it allows me to do damage over time in an area. That means if I do it on the Termagants, they actually just can't stand around and fire. They need to do what they can to micro out of that fiery area. And while they are microing out of there, they won't be shooting, so they won't be doing their range damage. And then just that fire ability, the Holy Pyre, as the ability is actually called, is going to be doing a lot of damage. So it'll actually be killing a lot of models. Let me take a look at my red. I'm already at 162 red. So that's one of the things that's really helping me out here. I should actually use the Holy Pyre right now. That would be a good time. My Inquisitor does have full energy, and yes, it does go off there. You know, I'm taking off a lot of models off those Hormagaunts. And then the Imperial Guard opening is pretty good for countering ranged. I'm countering melee units. I am going to take a break just to look over here, see what's going on with my teammate, as well as zoukka, since I've been focusing a lot on myself. I noticed that I tend to do that in replays, and, you know, to some extent it doesn't matter that much since, I mean, it's my cast, my channel. I can actually do what I want. Certainly, I mean, for fairness, I should try to view what else is going on. Over here, the Warlock has been upgraded to the Merciless Switchblade and the Champion's Robe. That is going to make him very tanky, and I already talked a bit about how I feel like Chaos in general struggles with tanky melee heroes. To some extent, just because the Chaos opening is not as conducive to focus fire. That being said, right now zoukka is playing as the Sorcerer, actually fully kitted out in Tier 1. And the Sorcerer is definitely, the Plague Champion is definitely better than the Sorcerer at dealing with tanky melee heroes in Tier 1. He has a starting bolter, so he has a range squad. He can be a source of focus fire himself. And then with this Bile Spewer, he can actually use the Bilious Discharge as a melee snare on a tanky melee hero. And that's a melee snare that he can get, again, in Tier 1, whereas the Sorcerer does not get his melee snare, Chains of Torment, until Tier 2. Over here, I actually upgraded to the Excruciators on the Inquisitor, so I forgoed the melee snare of the crossbow bolt pistol, but I decided to get one in the form of the Excruciators. The Excruciators has that assail ability. It is a melee snare, or it's a snare, a unit snare that is most useful against melee units. And the thing with the assail ability, though, is that you can only target one unit, and it also locks the Inquisitor in place. As you can see, I do have a lot of melee counters. I have these Catachans, they do have that shotgun ability, and then they're just a unit that most melee units don't even want to get in melee with. And of course I have this Sentinel, doing pretty well at level 2, certainly bleeding a lot of models from Termagants and Hormagaunts. And I've been doing pretty well to control Princess Ponypants, Termagants, and Hormagaunts as well. Well, I don't know if I've actually fought that Warrior Brood that much. But zoukka's apparently losing units. He lost an aspiring champion Heretic squad. Kickin F Ace did lose a Guardian weapon team, which I did not originally see, and he has since replaced it. Kickin F Ace also has a lot of resources, floating a bit. I wonder what he's going for. So, as you can see, I actually went for a Manticore, and that's something that, I've been playing Imperial Guard a little bit more, and I've actually been finding, like, I actually have trouble finding a reason not to get the Manticore. The Manticore is just so good. It's better than most Tier 3. It's better than about half of the game's Tier 3 nukes. I throw down the Holy Pyre right there, again, doing all this area of effect damage and debuffing. And then my Manticore is online, so hopefully I do something with that soon, because I was in a bad position where I was a little too far ahead with my Guardsmen. Some of my Guardsmen got very close to dying. And I actually do have a Sentinel missile launcher right now, but it's in a bad position. There goes a Manticore shot, a little late, and does not actually... I don't actually kill anything with the Manticore shot, but I did take out one of the Hormigaunt broods. Over here, looks like Zoukka did get an aspiring champion on his Raptor squad. That's a choice that I've often been wondering. Certainly as a Chaos player, I often feel like I often find that with Chaos units being fairly expensive, that the aspiring champion on the Chaos Raptor squad is something I usually feel like I can forego. I mean, certainly in an ideal case you would want it, but it's something that I usually find myself foregoing. Now right here I dropped a Bane Wolf. The Bane Wolf, obviously a unit exclusive to the Inquisitor. Again, you actually hardly ever see it. First of all, the Inquisitor is not that common, and then when you see Inquisitor play, they won't always get the Bane Wolf. It is something of a... It might be somewhat of a niche unit. It's actually a tank. It's actually basically a Chimera with an extra 200 health and a Bile Spear on top, basically a Flamer. And that Flamer is going to be very good for bashing generators. It will be very good against most of the Tyrant Units. And one of the disadvantages with PrincessPonyPants getting so many of those high model, low HP squads is that he's going to be very vulnerable to something like this Bane Wolf. That Bane Wolf is also great for bashing generators, and it is a vehicle, and a pretty tough vehicle at 700 health. Also has an ability similar to the Plague Champion's Bilious Discharge. Zoukka's having a lot of trouble here. He's been forced off a little bit. Because he's now dealing with two vehicles. He does have this Wraithlord. Kickin F apparently lost another Guardian weapon team, but he does have a Wraithlord. That's apparently what he was saving for. And then, of course, I do have my Bane Wolf. And the Bane Wolf, I used it to destroy this power farm over here. I'm just going to drive it over here and destroy that power farm. And as a vehicle, it's just fast. It can get around fast and quickly go around, destroy a power farm, and then maybe even destroy it before any of those units are even going to get there. So I've got quite an army right now. Bane Wolf, Manticore, Catachans. I didn't talk much about the Catachans, but those Catachans they're a pretty good unit. Certainly, it's another melee counter. The Sentinel is usually the primary Imperial Guard melee counter, but I think with a Hormigaunt Brood, a Hive Tyrant, and a Warrior Brood, the Sentinel Stomp by itself is not going to be enough. So I can use that Shotgun Blast on the Catachan Devils. You can even use Old Reliable as a melee counter. You just have to do it well before an enemy unit is in range with the Catachan Devils, or you can use it as a melee counter to prevent a melee unit getting into range with a different unit. Like, say you have your Guardsmen a little far ahead while your Catachans are in the back. Then the minimum range won't matter as much there. Ooh, Touch of Nurgle on Zoukka's Heretics might wipe these Banshees, and does in fact wipe those Banshees. So those Touch of Nurgle Heretics are extremely good. You know, Touch of Nurgle is an ability that, in my opinion, it's an engagement winner. And I think generally, if you have to deal with Touch of Nurgle, you might as well retreat, as this Kickin Ace took massive losses. In that engagement. I'm coming over here to support. I do have my Bane Wolf right up against these Plague Marines, though. So what I'm going to do, and now I have my Bane Wolf getting hit, it's snared, and it's also taking Venom Brood shots, so it does go down. What I tried to do, at least, was I tried to tie up the Plague Marines in melee, and then also have the Sentinel stomp them. I guess the part that I did not see coming was that Venom Brood from PrincessPonyPants. Now, Zoukka did communicate to his teammate that he did need AV, so it's not a huge surprise, at least not in retrospect from watching the replay. But it was something that came as a bit of a surprise to me. I tried to micro out of there, but I wasn't quite quick enough on taking care of the Plague Marines. My Guardsmen, they actually have been upgraded to Plasma Guns. Now, Plasma Guns, certainly against Tyranids, it's certainly not necessary when you only have Termagants and Hormigauns to deal with. But certainly now with both a Warrior Brood and a Venom Brood out on the field, I'm going to want those Plasma Guns right now. It's such a huge damage increase against heavy armor, because by default, Guardsmen have piercing damage. Piercing has a penalty against heavy armor. Switching 3 of those weapons for Plasma means that those 3 guns that switched, instead of having a penalty against heavy armor, they're now going to have a bonus, and a very big bonus. Now, I've actually, on the Inquisitor, I've switched out Assail, or Excruciators, for Purgatus, or Purgatus, however you say it. This is an ability, again, hardly ever seen, and yet very good. I also haven't seen much of my Manticore Strike, surprisingly, and now I'm in a little bit of trouble right here. But there goes that Purgatus ability. It stuns and does damage when it explodes. Sentinel in a lot of trouble right now. Could go down, but my teammate comes in to support. Sentinel does go down, and my teammate actually takes out Zoukka's Las Cannon Havoc. So I've certainly lost a few units. There have been certainly quite a few losses. Kickin F ace, now with that Dark Reaper squad as well. Alright, Inquisitor right here. So, Inquisitor is actually a level 4. Now, the Inquisitor... One of the reasons I've been playing the Inquisitor is that I actually think of her as a sorcerer... equivalent is the best word, but she's similar to the Sorcerer. Similar to the Sorcerer, more so than most other heroes, in that she mainly focuses on using her spells rather than actually fighting. With the Sorcerer, I actually say that he's not quite... he doesn't quite fall into the distinction of either being a melee hero or a ranged hero. I mean, obviously he does primarily fight with a melee weapon, but he does not do it on par with most of the other melee with most of the game's melee heroes. But the Inquisitor is a little better than the Sorcerer in that respect, and certainly she can also actually be changed to a ranged hero either with the crossbow bolt pistol or the Inferno pistol. And the crossbow bolt pistol actually has the interesting thing of making her both a ranged hero and a melee hero, although not quite good at either. You can obviously see this Carnifex from PrincessPonyPants does not have an upgrade, and I'm not sure why. I certainly could use one. That Carnifex is really tough, and at this point in the game, to be honest, I was not really sure what we were going to do. That was somewhat of a bad Purgatus, and I'm actually... Ooh, I might lose the Catachans, but I don't. Lucky to get them out of there. Looks like Warp Spider's trying to cap this point over here, but they do lost 3 models, so unfortunately Kickin F just bled models there and did not get the point. Alright, Carnifex now has the Barbed Strangler. That's going to be good infantry control. You know, I actually think that's a very good choice considering he's in a lane against Imperial Guard. We'll suppress all of my Guardsman units and then do a lot of damage with the area of effect attack. This Warlock has been upgraded to have Heart of Darkness, so this is the Jedi build that Steve Budd has called it. Guardsman right here. Look at how much damage that Barbed Strangler Carnifex did. So that Barbed Strangler Carnifex seems to do quite a bit better than the Barbed Strangler Warrior. Now, it actually says the Barbed Strangler Carnifex is plasma cannon damage. I wonder if that also holds true for the Barbed Strangler Warrior. Alright, so this is a little bit bad for Kickin Ace. He does get snared by the Termagants, but I'm throwing down a Manticore Strike. Does not hit much, but it does certainly buy the Warlock time to get out of there. Actually got some few hits with the last one. I put a Lehman Russ on the field. And right there, I actually stunned the Hive Tyrant with Purgatus, and that actually killed him. Well, that by itself didn't kill him, but he got stunned and then he didn't retreat. I have a Lehman Russ out here that is sort of my answer to the Carnifex. I saw a Carnifex, wasn't quite sure what to do about it. So the Lehman Russ can kite the Carnifex. Right now, it's not upgraded because I'm a little low on resources. And now, oh my god, so the combination of the Wraith Guard, as well as that Eldritch Storm doing a lot of damage. This Tzeentch Chaos Space Marine squad, Chaos Space Marine member pretty lucky to get out alive. So Kickin Ace has definitely taken a few losses, but he does have these Wraith Guard out on the field that obviously just did quite well. Took out a lot of units, and he did just take out that that Carnifex, which was, I mean, the hardest thing that we were going to have to deal with, to be honest. One of the things I don't even think I talked about with the Inquisitor is that she does have that Hammer of the Witches ability, and that's just another great way to deal with tanky melee heroes. stuns them and does a lot of damage, and you can use it against a lot of other units too. I mean, if you use it on a Warrior Brood model, one of those Warrior Brood models is actually going to be pretty close to dying. Another Pergatus, and look at that Pergatus. Wow, took out 4 models right there, and stunned most of those units. Now I'm starting to get a little overwhelmed though, trying to move that Leman Russ out of there, now fully upgraded and now about to go down. Getting overwhelmed by warriors, getting snared, takes a lot of hits. And unfortunately, I lose the Leman Russ. So I was actually wondering if maybe I should have gotten... I don't know. Maybe if I should have gotten a... Should have saved up and waited for a Baneblade instead. So, I mean, that Leman Russ, it went down. The Leman Russ is really tough, and it's really good these days. But obviously, in that situation, I had a little bit of trouble. I got overwhelmed. Now, these Plague Marines were definitely instrumental in taking out my Leman Russ. And even though they don't do that much damage by themselves, but the big thing is just that they have that snare. The Plague Marine snare actually lasts for 10 seconds. That's quite a long time. By comparison, the Las Cannon Havoc snare only lasts for 5 seconds, but the Las Cannon does do quite a bit more damage. Catachan Devil's still around, fully upgraded. Or actually, no, not fully upgraded. They lost one of the sergeants. Ooh, and that Plague Cloud is right there. Trying to focus down that Plague Champion, but again, that Plague Cloud is doing a lot of damage. I'm getting really close to losing one of those Guardsman squads. Getting very, very close. I'm lucky to get it out of there alive. All right, over here. Did try to cap with my Catachan Devils, but they definitely got forced off. Lucky to not lose any models, though. Inquisitor coming back out here. Now we have the Doom of Malantai out for PrincessPonyPants. I don't even really know what this thing does. I know it's a Super Zoanthrope. Brood Nest as well. There goes again that Pergatus. It's such a good ability. I mean, even just for the stun, because you stun so many units with that Pergatus. And I follow up the Pergatus. First of all, a rocket run into a Manticore Strike, takes out the Brood Nest, took out at least one of PrincessPonyPants' units. Yeah, took out one, took some others really close, so certainly some losses from PrincessPonyPants. Actually combined the rocket one, and what I did with the rocket run was that instead of letting that rocket run go toward PrincessPonyPants' base, I actually had the first one go in the opposite direction. It went closer to me. So Zoukka suffering a bit, certainly taking a lot of unit losses. It always seems like he's got 3 units, but it's always 3 different units. Does now have a Dreadnought, vanilla Dreadnought. And yeah, the blue team needs to cap. They're at a 1-to-1. I try to micro out of that Tyrannoformation, but I still get hit. Those Tyrannoformation Spires, I often say that I think the Tyrannoformation is bad, and I think it is bad. But what I've been noticing is that those spires, the disruption that they have, or basically just the effect, has a bigger radius than it looks like. Alright, these Warp Spiders actually, I mean, yeah, the Warp Spiders put a Haywire on the Chaos Dreadnought, but Kickin F Ace does not really have any hard AV to follow it up with. His hardest AV, ironically, is the Seer Council. So the Seer Council, they do about 40 DPS power melee per model, or 200 DPS as a squad. So with the power melee modifier for vehicle damage, they are going to be doing about 30 DPS to vehicles. And I just wanted to get that out there simply because people often don't realize that they often just think in very black and white terms. Heavy melee is anti-vehicle, power melee is not. And it's not exactly true. It's a little more complex than that. What it is that power melee does half damage to vehicles, while heavy melee does half damage to vehicles, while power melee only does 15% damage to vehicles. Looks like the game is about to end. Got some Ogrins out on the field. I felt that would have been more useful against the Doom of Malantai than another tank. But that is the end of the game. Now, that game, certainly, I mean, it's obviously, again, this is another game that I'm posting where I won by quite a bit. But I still felt there were some interesting things here, and I still just wanted to talk about some things. And, at the same time, it's weird how on this map it seems like the fighting often feels even, but then somehow I just find myself winning by quite a lot of victory points. And I think part of that may just be the way certain people are playing and maybe the way this map is designed, where a lot of the fighting tends to gravitate towards the middle, and then whoever wins the middle is generally going to be winning this victory point. And then people often forget to deal with these side victory points. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the cast. Have a good night.